Joining me now is author of international bestsellers, including his latest work, The War on the West, Douglas Murray. Douglas, we will delve into the outrageous misinformation we saw in the UK in the aftermath of the Southport attack. But first to the US election. By the time we speak next week, we'll hopefully have a clear answer on who's going to be the 47th President of the United States. The media narrative, I've got to say, has become extra crazy in these last days. We've had more manufactured outrages than I can even keep up with, from the whole Tony Hinchcliffe joke about Puerto Rico to these absurd claims about Trump threatening Liz Cheney's life. How do you see these final days? And is the misinformation, if you want to call it that, that we're seeing, this massive media narrative, is it almost a form of election interference?
Well, it's very interesting, as you say, Rita. I mean, there's this bizarre thing where both sides are saying, that they want to find the other in a gaffe, and the other side is really revealing who they are. But there's an extraordinary amount of dishonesty. I mean, we saw this with the Madison Square Garden rally of Trump's, where the media said, which I was at, I attended as a journalist, my capacity as a journalist. It was very interesting. It was an absolutely packed center, and lots of very happy people of all backgrounds. And there was this sort of roast comedian who made this not particularly funny joke. He just made a joke many hours before the main speakers, and then everyone tried to pretend that Trump hates Puerto Ricans. Then we've had all these other ones, and then there's some real ones. I mean, it did seem. I mean, I know he's bumbling and everything, but it did seem like, in reaction to that comedian, Joe Biden actually did call Trump supporters all garbage. Now, again, never underestimate the ability of Joe Biden to misspeak, but it did come out like that. But yes, of course, these last hours, there is this desperate thing for the deciding gaffe. And the truth is, I don't think that's going to be the thing that decides it.
Well, there's certainly been a wide gap we've seen with the way the men are voting compared to the women. You look at particularly unmarried women, their voting pattern is very different to the average man. In the early votes that have been cast across the country, there's currently believed to be a 10-point gap between male and female voters. And that gap, Douglas, is even bigger in the swing states.
That's right. I wrote about this in the New York Post the other day. It's something the Republicans will really obviously be very concerned about. I'm not a fan of early voting in general. I'm not a fan of making mail-in ballots the norm. In any case, that's where post-COVID America has got stuck, and it's now perfectly normal to cast your vote weeks before the election. Yes, the problem for the Republicans is that the evidence shows that, particularly in swing states, the difference between early voting female voters and early voting male voters is higher than 10%. And since there is a slight, by no means all women go to Kamala, goodness knows, not all men go to Trump, but there is a slight lean in each direction. Since that is the case, a lot of Republicans are going to have to turn out on the day if they want to make sure that Kamala Harris isn't the next commander-in-chief.
Well, you also noted there the duplicity in the Democrats' appeal to women. They seem to know what a woman is when there's an election, but the rest of the year, if you ask them, they think they need a degree in biology to be able to answer that question. And we've had some comments said about women that have also been seized upon by many conservative women, understandably so. Billionaire Mark Cuban, who's been very loud supporter of the Democrats, said that Donald Trump is never around strong, intelligent women. How do you think that message is being perceived?
I mean, it's really not going down well. Remember, Kamala Harris's campaign started a couple of months ago with joy, and they've gone in a couple of months from joy to literal fascist Hitler on the other side, and any woman around Trump is inevitably dumb or garbage. this is not a good way to persuade the electorate. Among the people who spoke on stage, as well as members of the Trump family at the Madison Square Garden rally, there was Tulsi Gabbard. I don't think anyone would say that she wasn't a strong or intelligent woman, apart from Mark Cuban.
Mm.
It's a really low way of doing things, this. Uh, and a sort of desperation, but it's this idea that you can kind of whip people into line. You can shame people into voting for your candidate and not voting for the other guy. And I just don't think it works anymore. You saw that with the big embrace of the garbage meme by Republicans, including Donald Trump, from the moment that Biden fumbled and stumbled out with it. They've had this. Trump voters have been told for almost a decade now that they are ignoramuses, deplorables, Hitlers, and much more. And if the Democrats think that's the hope narrative that's going to get them over the hurdle, I think they might have another thing coming.
Now, we know that two candidates have very different worldviews when it comes to foreign affairs, particularly when it comes to the Middle East. You've spent a great deal of time in the past year in Israel. What will it mean for that country if Kamala Harris wins, and what will it mean if Donald Trump wins?
Well, we don't really know to a great extent. Donald Trump has a rather clever, I think, thing of saying, I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do, because why would I tell you about a negotiation in advance? I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do in a political negotiation and a peace negotiation, as with a business deal. Nevertheless, we know his views. Kamala Harris, the problem is she always says we need a ceasefire and that the IDF must go no further. She's been proven wrong every time. I just got back from a spell in Israel and Lebanon and Gaza the other day, and among other places, I was in Rafah, where of course Sinwar was recently killed, the head of Hamas, and that was the place where Kamala Harris said the IDF should not go. If they had have followed her instructions, they'd have never have found and killed Sinwar. Lebanon, you have Hezbollah having dug all these tunnels, which I've seen myself, right at the Israeli border, right under the watchtowers of the United Nations peacekeeping force, and gathering together 160,000 missiles, short and long range, all under the watchful eyes of the UN. And Kamala Harris always says, don't do anything about it, Israel. Why don't we have the lovely status quo of Hezbollah being able to fire rockets peacefully? So we really don't know very much about her policy, other than that she always says she wants peace. I'm afraid that the world just isn't like that, and that region in particular. To get to peace, you have to win. And what's more, it is clear that Kamala Harris, to the extent that she has foreign policy advisors, are the sort of people who tell her that the whole conflict in the region, which is all the result of the revolutionary Islamic government of Iran spreading its terror proxies across the region, that instead of addressing Iran, the thing to do is to give the Palestinians yet another state to turn it into another terror state. And that's the policy, as far as you can see, that there is a policy of Kamala Harris. So it's not a good outlook. It's really not a good outlook.
No, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the advice she's getting. It seems to be similar, if not worse, than the advice Joe Biden and before him Barack Obama were getting. And they've really have emboldened Iran in the past 4 years.
But remember, of course, Rita, that, whatever you can say against them, Joe Biden had spent a very, very long career involving himself in foreign affairs. And Barack Obama was a far more impressive and cerebral figure, I think, than Kamala Harris. I don't think in Kamala Harris you could have a commander-in-chief with so little foreign policy experience, who has thought about these issues so little. And you can tell how little she's thought about them, because whenever the public has the great treat of actually seeing her have to answer a question unprepared, she just doesn't know what to say. There is no bank
It's
of
been
knowledge.
embarrassing.
At least Joe Biden could sort of riff about the time he met Golda Meir or Theodore Herzl or whoever.